tuning in to another episode of Real Solutions. I'm your host, Anna Aquino, and I am uber beyond blessed to have an amazing organization and one of the spearheads of that, Milam Byers, here with me today. Is that how you pronounce your name? Milam?
It's Milam, actually.
Milam! Okay, I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Milam Byers, who is super awesome, and I really want for y'all to hear about this awesome organization. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we always say on the show that we have a very real God who works in the lives of real people, and he gives them real solutions. So Tell us your story. How is it that God has gotten you through to be where you are today as such a spearhead into this ministry?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I would say that it started growing up as a pastor's kid. So I saw a very real, tangible faith in my parents and how they were obedient to God's call. When I was 11, my dad felt called to become a church planter and moved out of a very comfortable, traditional pastoral role in South Carolina and moved us all the way to Reno, Nevada, which was a place I had never even heard of in the 6th grade. And a place that didn't have really any evangelical churches. And so it was a culture shock, moving from the Bible Belt to Reno, where gambling was legal and prostitution is legal. And really, like, from that early age, having to figure out, like, how do I talk about my faith? What does it really mean? And seeing God just really save people and bring them through our house and into our church. So from there, I went back to college in South Carolina, and music has always been something that moved me very deeply. And I realized that didn't happen the same way to everyone. And in college, started a band. One thing led to another, and I dropped out of college for a semester because I got offered to go on a real tour with a national recording artist, and I never looked back. Before I knew it, I had been touring the world as a guitar player for about 10 years, and stayed in the music industry since that time. So I've been an artist. I've been a manager. I've been a chaplain for artists and for those that tour for much of the last 20 years. And that is how I learned about Food for the Hungry. FH, as we call it, works with a lot of artists. I think that's how you met my brother Jared, Anna. But just always having a passion for the poor and for the developing world. My wife and I, a couple years into our marriage, got the opportunity to go to Bolivia in February of 2006, and then 6 months later, we found ourselves in Uganda in September of that year. And those two trips really has shaped our marriage. It's really shaped, the things that we invest in, the things we care about, and seeing God's goodness and his imprint and his image all over the world. I think before that, even touring internationally, I experienced something different. I saw God moving in ways that I had never seen before in the United States, and that really lit a fire in me. And so when I began to talk to Food for the Hungry, and I learned more, and I saw the things that they were doing in some of the poorest areas of the world, it was a natural fit. It was something that I could. I had two passions, and that was, to glorify God through music and in relationship with artists and helping them use their art for good and use their influence for good, and then, helping the poor. And so, there's a tangible way that these two things can connect. And FH was able to really make that, believe it or not, a job. So that was about 3 years ago. And so since then, I've been able to see a lot and experience a lot. And, my favorite part of the job is taking artists or pro athletes to see our work. Many of them having never experienced third world situations before, and just really leading them in that and showing them how we can do this together. That we don't have to just stand by and wonder, do I have any part in this? Is there anything I can do to help? Because it can be very overwhelming. But just walking alongside them and doing this together.
Amen. Amen. Now, explain for those who don't know, what is Food for the Hungry? What do you guys do?
Well, our name can be very deceiving because we do a lot more than food. We do what we call community transformation and holistic development. And so we started in 1971, and it was started by Dr. Larry Ward, and he believed that God called him and Food for the Hungry to the hardest places. So we are not only in some of the poorest countries, but even in the context of the poorest countries, we are seeking out and intentionally going to some of the most vulnerable people there. So I always tell people before they visit a field with me that, there's probably going to be like the city you've heard of in that country, and then we're probably going to have to drive for a while to get where we work. And we're going to drive past where all the other NGOs and nonprofits are working, and we're going to keep going because that's always been part of our mission. And holistic development really means the whole person. So we recognize that poverty is very complex. It's different, the cycle of poverty and why communities find themselves in that cycle is different and complex. So we listen and we address spiritual poverty, physical poverty, and our goal is to give a biblical worldview to anyone in the world so that they know that they have a purpose because they were created in God's image and that they have hope. Hopelessness is very dangerous.
It is.
And a community without hope will never leave that cycle of poverty because imagine parents raising their children in hopelessness. You make certain decisions that if you don't believe your kids have a future beyond what you see in front of you, education doesn't matter as much, health doesn't matter as much. What you're doing about that doesn't really matter if you're in a state of hopelessness. So the first thing we have to do when we begin walking with a community is to instill that in them and show them, hey, we're here to help you, but you're going to do this. We call it community-owned transformation because if they're not actually part of it, when we leave, it's just going to dry up and they're going to go right back to what they know. But we want to empower them. We want to inspire them. We want to give them hope and show them, hey, you can do this. You have the resources. We're here to help you.
Right.
And, one of the unique things about Food for the Hungry is that we always have a plan to leave. So from day one, we have an exit strategy that we discussed with the leaders in that particular community. And it takes us about 10 to 12 years to go from abject poverty to self-sustainability and thriving. And so that's one of the things that just never gets old. I get to see that all around the world. I've seen communities that we've left. I've seen communities that we just started in. And just to be able to look at them and go, wow, when I come back in a few years or next year, things are going to be different because I've seen it enough times to know.
That's so cool.
And they're part of this,
That's really cool.
and that's important. Like we don't ever want to come into a place and think we're the hero when we're the great, white savior that's going to help them.
Right.
We want to work with them. We want to inspire them to keep going.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times Americans get so overwhelmed. We see these pictures of poverty around the world and, who am I? I'm one person. And I will share this story briefly. Most of my readers have probably heard it, but I was struggling with the Lord about my call into ministry, and I kept saying, but God, I'm one person. I'm one person. We all like to say that to God. And I was in an inner city park one time, and I was cleaning up all this glass, and my mom was talking to these little girls, and these little girls were just chitter chattering. And I'm looking at the glass that's in my hand, and I'm going, but God, I'm one person. But God, I'm one person. And I felt the Holy Spirit say to me, but that piece of glass will never end up in that child's knee. And I get so emotional when I say that story to people, because yeah, you are one person, but you will mean everything to that one child. You will mean everything to that one community that you were helped restoring. So instead of looking at the huge problem, let's start looking at one solution at a time. Because that's how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. That's how you help move forward one step at a time. So what would you say to most Americans? Because I think we hear these stories and we want to move, but there's just it just seems so big, and we just put it off.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles, lies that we believe, and it is a lie, because, I know when Food for the Hungry was founded, it was in a time period, the early 70s, where the world was becoming more global. So even in the U.S., we're beginning to see starving children, and the drought in Ethiopia, and there refugees fleeing the war in Vietnam, and some horrible situations. And Dr. Larry Ward, Food for the Hungry was started with basically the mantra of, if they die one at a time, then we can help them one at a time. And so that's still what we do, is one child, one family, one community at a time. And everybody, if you're watching this on YouTube, you have far more than most of the world already, just because you have access and are able to see and hear my voice right now. So it's not always, you don't have to be a wealthy person. It doesn't even always take money, but advocating for those that don't have a voice, standing up for the poor and for issues that really matter and really affect real people. Not everybody gets to travel and meet with these families, but I know they're real. They have real names. I've been in their homes. They need our help, and we've been given much. I think the Lord would ask us, with what we've been given, to glorify Him in every way possible. And He said, the poor is always going to be with you. And I think that is not because He couldn't change that, not because He doesn't have the power to lift people out of poverty. Of course He does. But the poor are not only a blessing to us, but we if we believe and follow Jesus, then we are to empty ourselves out and lay ourselves down. And serving the poor is one of the easiest, most practical ways that we can do that.
Absolutely. When I was talking to you earlier, my husband and I have sponsored a child for a lot of years. I'm thinking about 6 or 7 years now. And not through Food for the Hungry, from another organization. And so one thing that we do, and because I'm not a every month bill kind of girl, they drive me bonkers, but around January, February, when we get a substantial check, we always just write the entire year and pay it off for that year, so that we know that child is going to be taken care of. And we've done that for years. And when I met Jared, I did some homework on Food for the Hungry, because, here we've been blessing this organization, and we're not going to stop with him, but he's getting ready to age out. And, I want to know what the money I've been putting aside. And one thing that Jared said, which I thought was really cool, is he said 88% of the money that you give to Food for the Hungry is going to help. is going to the child, is going to the things that are needed versus administration costs. And that was not something I thought of. You all work, you need to get income, but where is our money going? And we actually found out that Food for the Hungry's percentage is higher than the one that we've been giving to for all these years. Mm-hmm. So how do you say, and I don't want to say it's competition because you all are just blessing the world globally, but how do you feel that Food for the Hungry, other than just that percentage, is set apart from some of the other organizations?
Yeah, I mean, being good stewards of what people give and what God leads people to give is very important. I can tell you that as someone who is charged with creating new campaigns and partnerships, it can be frustrating because we guard that so dearly. Like, it can be hard to innovate and grow. But I'm so proud of that. I'm so glad that it's not the other way around. Mm-hmm. We're not an organization that's just throwing money and like, oh, let's see if this works. And not at all.
Right.
When you give to FH, you're supporting this community development that I just talked about, and that's done primarily through helping these children through sponsorship. And so that's huge. And then the other thing that really sets us apart is the exit strategy. I have seen communities where other organizations have been there for decades. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, if this was a business, if we were looking at this of like financially viable solutions, then it makes more sense to stay somewhere for a long time and keep registering kids as they're born and as they come through to get more and more kids sponsored in that community. And we don't do that. Our goal is to see them self-sustainable. Mm-hmm. And that's, I don't know another organization that's doing that. And
I haven't heard of one.
And, we've been doing it a long time, mm-hmm. and we are graduating these communities. That's what we call it. It's awesome. A celebration. It's a party when we leave. And a lot of times they ask us to leave before we're scheduled to, because they're like, we're good. We got this, Go help those other people down the road. Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, we don't just pick up and leave. Right. These are measured, very systematic approaches to make sure that we're leaving them better than we found them, much better. So, that's one thing that always stands out, is that you're not going to go to an FH community that we've been in since the 70s or the 80s. It's just not going to happen. So.
Absolutely. I want to encourage you all, as the holidays are approaching, and I think more and more during the holidays people have a heart to give, and they want to start reaching out and how can they give back. I want to just tell you all that Food for the Hungry is a great organization that you can be giving back. So get off your tushes. Stop. I'm going to stop this YouTube. It's going to be over soon. And I want you to go check out their website. Go check out what they're doing. And don't just think about it. Start acting, folks. Because it's been so long that American churches have been stuck and happy in their four little walls. But, Jesus didn't die just to make us comfortable. Jesus died so that we can go outside the four walls. And I want you guys to encourage you all to what can you be doing, and this is a great organization that you could be helping with. And I want you to remember that God has awesome plans for your life, so get excited. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.